Hi, my name's Stacy. I'm from Central Bottle Wine and Provisions in Central Square in Cambridge, and we're here at the Blue Room restaurant also in Cambridge this morning, and we are going to be preparing mushroom pâté. So I want to start by sharing a little bit about the mushrooms we're going to be using for this morning, actually. And this recipe really can use a variety of mushrooms. You don't have to stick to what we're using. Be creative, use whatever you either have in your house or whatever's at the market that day, or at the farmer's market if you're at that in season. This morning we're using some portobellos, which are these nice big plump guys here, some creminis, which are very similar to your everyday white button mushroom, some shiitakes, and some hedgehogs, which are these gorgeous amber mushrooms. The whole mushroom is really going to be used for this recipe. I like to clean them off a little bit because these are grown in soil, and usually I'll just take the bottom part right off. These are great for stock, so just soak them in water, use them, don't throw them away, compost them something. And these guys are really clean this morning actually, but if you ever find any little bit of dirt, try not to use any water or anything, just use a dishcloth just to get the dirt off. And the only other exception to that is the shiitakes. All these guys have really nice moist stems, but the shiitakes have a really fibrous stem, not great for this recipe. So you just plop them off, really easy. They pull right off, and those are great to save also for stock, for soup stock. So just hold on to those guys for another recipe. And some recipes will tell you to chop your mushrooms. I actually really like it really rustic. So I would just for this recipe start tearing them into little bits. All of them can just get torn, and even these big guys. You can chop as well, but this is much easier than getting a cutting board and a knife out. Just feel free to chop them all and tear. Do that with all your mushrooms. This is about a little over a pound of mushrooms that we're going to use, about a pound, a couple ounces, but it's very liberal about the amounts that you want to use. Once you have all your mushrooms torn, ready for the oven, we're going to put them on a cookie sheet, and we're going to season them with a little bit of salt and pepper, and we're going to toss them with olive oil and some fresh thyme, and put them right into the oven, 325 to 350 oven for about 15 minutes. And then when you're done, this is what they're going to look like. They'll condense, they'll shrivel, and all their flavors will be condensed, and they'll be ready for the next step, which is sautéing the onions. The next step in our pâté recipe is to sauté our onions and garlic, and we're going to add a little bit of olive oil to our pan. We have one onion that's been pretty finely chopped up, but don't go crazy. We're going to pulse all of this in the food processor after, so just a nice chop. We're going to put our onions right in, and then we're going to follow that with 1 clove of garlic. And again, just a rough chop is fine. And we're going to season everything with a little bit of salt. And then these just are going to get tossed with the olive oil. So everybody's coated and happy. And then we're going to just let these cook down until they're reduced and they're translucent, about 5 to 10 minutes. All right, so our onions are ready. They're translucent. They've been cooking for about 5 to 8 minutes, and we're ready to use them. So we're going to turn off the heat. And we're going to put these right into our food processor. And we're also going to add in our roasted mushrooms. Let's go in, and we're going to give these a few pulses first before we add our other ingredients. Just to get that started a little bit. And the next item that's going in is our roasted walnuts. And these are toasted walnuts. These have just gone in the oven, 350, 5 to 10 minutes, just so they're toasted. The oils get a nice aroma to them. Let them cool off a little bit, and then those will go right in. And we're going to give that a few more pulses. So the mixture right now is going to get to look pretty dry and clumpy, and this is where we're going to add a lot of our wet ingredients to start thinning it out. We're going to add our cheese, which is, this is great Parmesan cheese, but you could use pecorino as well, anything with a nice salty bit to it. And we're going to add a little bit of our cream. We're going to add our sherry. This is 2 tablespoons of sherry, and I actually don't cook the sherry. I put it in the end because it's almost like adding vinegar, a bright acidity to the mushrooms, which can have a softer flavor, and that just kind of brings it up a little bit. You could use lemon juice too if you don't want to use any alcohol. We're going to add our cubed butter and our parsley. We're going to give this a few more pulses just to get it mixed in. And we're going to start adding our olive oil. Just add it in a nice thin stream. And let that go for a minute or two. Keep checking it. You can see from this consistency it's still a little bit thick for me. So I'll give it a little stir. We'll put it back on. Give it a little salt and pepper at this point too. And we'll let it go a little more. And this is a pretty rustic recipe. It doesn't have to be a fine, creamy pâté like we see with a lot of chicken liver or duck liver pâtés. We want it to be a nice coarse texture, but with some smoothness that we added from all the butter and all the creamy ingredients. So at this point, it's great to go. We're going to put this in a bowl and let it chill for about an hour, just to let everything come together. You can eat it right away like this, but I prefer it when it's had a little time just to settle and all the flavors to come together. So we've just taken our pâté out of the fridge after a couple hours and just let it rest. And my serving suggestion would be to use a baguette and just slice it up. These can be toasted and rubbed with a little bit of garlic also in the oven, just to give it a little more flavor. Give it a nice spread right on your crostini. And then at the store at Central Bottle, we actually top it with a little bit of our onion jam. And this has a little bit of mustard seeds, some sherry vinegar, caramelized onions, and we plate it just like that. This recipe, as you can see, is just a little bit in this plate, but it's enough for a party. It'll serve about 25 people. You can make many crostinis if you don't have that many people coming over. You can certainly freeze part of this recipe. It freezes really well, or it's great for a few days later. And I'd also like to suggest, if you have a vegan or vegetarian diet, you can omit the dairy products, the cream, the butter, and the Parmesan that we used. I'd substitute a little more olive oil. I'd substitute a little bit of vegetable stock just to thin it out like we were doing with some of the other products. And it's just as great. Season it a little more possibly also, but it'll be a great vegetarian offering. And we'd also like to suggest serving it with a great Italian wine. This is La Maggiorina from the Piedmont region, from the town of Boca. And it has a nice meaty earthiness, a nice mushroom with a little bit of fruit in the background. And it'll pair really well with the mushrooms in this dish.